What a view!
This is incredible.
An Ontario County nonprofit.
Over the horizon, high-altitude balloons.
3, 2, 1, launch.
Hey guys, Tori here from Overlook Horizon. Good evening, everybody. Happy Memorial Day, and we're celebrating today, I guess, or remembering today the men and women, the heroes that have served our country here in the United States. So wherever you are celebrating from or reflecting from, happy Memorial Day to you, and thanks to your service if you or your family has been in the military. So we are live here tonight for SpaceX's and NASA's flight readiness review. This is going to be a little bit of a bust already, because about 20 minutes ago, NASA announced that the flight readiness review press conference. Sorry, I couldn't remember what I was going to say. The flight readiness review press conference was going to be audio only. So we're going to have no visuals during the press conference. It's going to be an audio media conference, audio only conference, only for the media. Something like that. You get the idea. But anyways, I'm here. You can look at me. We'll smile. We'll chat it along, and we'll hang out here as we're getting ready for Wednesday's DM-2 flight. Now, I say Wednesday, but weather right now is not looking great. So we're still 40% chance of launch. It's a lot better than 0. 40%. Flights have flown with less than that. Flights have flown at 30% chance of launch. So it could still happen. But I would also just make sure you got blocked off on your calendar May 30th, which is the backup date, and then May 31st is the backup date. So just keep those penciled in just in case we don't go on Wednesday. So hello everybody. I see everybody chatting it up. You guys were chatting it up early, especially in the YouTube comments here before I even got started. You were here before I was here, I think. So GVA, hello Tori. When's the next gaming stream? That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe tonight, but I probably have to make a decision on that. I've got some stuff that I'm trying to put together here for Wednesday. So I'm working on some overlays here to try to get the whole timeline of events laid out so that as we're going through the events on Wednesday, everybody can be fully aware of what's happening. Now, I don't know if I can get that to work. I'm trying to code. It's a basically custom overlay that I'm coding and putting together, and we'll see if I can do it fast enough. But that's what I'm working on right now. But I'm gonna see if you're in our Discord, GVA. I'll send a message there if I do go live on the other channel. But thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. Let's see, before we get started, audio's better than nothing. Thanks for the updates. Yeah, so we'll get audio. We'll get to hear from it's pretty much all the same personnel that we heard from at the last flight readiness review, which was Friday. So we'll get to hear from all the same personnel again, so you just have to envision everybody's faces in your head from Friday's stream. Let's see, I saw a bunch of other... If I missed your chat earlier, definitely let me know. What time would I see it in the UK on Wednesday, please? Well, it's going to be... launch is 16:33 Eastern Time, which is 20:33 UTC. And so there's a couple of commands that you can type into the chat. I'll show you one of them, especially on the YouTube side of things. You can do !DM-2, and it will give you some info about the flight. If you want to know all the commands that are available, you can type !commands, and there will be a whole bunch of... there's not a whole bunch of them, but there's a few commands that you can type in for some frequent things. So there's things like !DM-2, !booster, if you want to know about the booster, !Bob, if you want to know about Bob, !Doug, if you want to know about Doug. It's a whole bunch of things that you can do there. I would also say that there is a timeout period, so you can't do it more than once every 15. I think it's 10 or 15 seconds or something like that. So if you see somebody else use it, you can't use it again right away. I miss any live stream, but I can't understand with my... Yeah, hang out with us. We're getting things ready, because we will definitely be live on Wednesday for sure, assuming we have a flight and they don't just scrub it. But we'll be live on Wednesday. Question is going to be, my original plan was to go live right around noon Eastern time, which is like 1600 UTC. I believe that is the correct conversion. But I think my plan now is probably, I might go a little bit earlier than that. So keep an eye out on, especially on the YouTube page, for the start time of the live stream. It may be as early as 10 or 11 a.m. Eastern time. I might be changing that here in the next day or so. So we might start early on Wednesday, but it's going to be a long day Wednesday. We're going to be streaming for a while. Hopefully we get a successful launch, but if we don't, we'll be back live again to see everybody and chat it up on May 30th, which is the backup date. So Space Isaac says hello over on the Twitch channel. What's up, Space Isaac? How we doing today? Just a dude in trouble over on Periscope. Wishing all well. My buddy and I are driving down tomorrow to Daytona. We will be at the launch. Well, that will be pretty awesome to see. Although I will just reiterate, with the whole situation going down, NASA does not want people to go down in person. Obviously, I don't think anybody's going to stop you from going, but just be safe out there. Be safe. We got some crazy times going on, and NASA really doesn't want people going down there with everything that's happening. But if you did make the decision that you're going to go down, just be safe. So we will, everybody's playing with the 8-ball here, I see on the YouTube channel. I missed whatever the questions were. We got Keysify threw up the weather. Now, I got to be careful before we go too far. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Okay, so they didn't have this up a few minutes ago. I was like, where exactly are they going to put the press conference? So there, I found it. I didn't know where they were going to put it before, but we will. Now I have it, so we're ready to go so we don't miss it there. But we will chat about the weather. We'll take a look at weather because weather is looking kind of sketchy right now, especially with the current notification that just came out from the National Hurricane Center. The National Atlantic Hurricane Center is issuing a warning for weather between now and Wednesday, which includes Wednesday. It's not ideal for launching rockets. If you've got a National Hurricane Center warning, now they're expecting a disturbance to bring lots of precipitation and stormy weather into the area on Wednesday, but it is not expected to become a tropical storm of any sort. It's just one of those things that it's, bigger than your regular storm, something that they wanted to let people know about. It's a tropical disturbance that's heading towards Florida between now and will continue affecting Florida all through Wednesday. So that's basically the problem that we have for launching Wednesday, is there's a tropical disturbance heading towards Florida. Not great. So we're going to see what happens. I mean, worst case scenario, it's not a big deal if they have to delay it to May 30th. We'll get a couple extra days for everybody to prepare and get the hype train going. So it'll still be exciting, even if we have to wait until May 30th. But I'm just bursting at the seams, ready for this thing to go. It's Florida. Yeah, and that's the thing that Jerry says over on YouTube too, is he says it's Florida and spring, summer, rain every other day. Yeah, the Florida weather, especially in the spring and the summer, can be really unpredictable, and you can get precipitation that comes in and get a window of opportunity, and that's all they need is just a short window of opportunity that the rocket can launch through, as long as there's a whole bunch of weather criteria, whether it's lightning, precipitation, thick cumulus clouds, all of that's got to be clear for the rocket to launch. Now, the other problem here is that not only do they need clear weather for launch, they need clear weather for any sort of abort scenario recovery. And there's a bunch of abort scenarios. They're monitoring 50 different locations all along the path of the flight path, because Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon specifically has abort capabilities all the way to orbit, from launch all the way to orbit, so they can really abort anywhere along their northeastern flight path take a look at that here in a second too. I just don't want to miss the press conference it's down here, which is supposed to go live like now. So we'll listen to the press conference, and then afterwards we'll talk more about weather, flight path, all that kind of stuff. So stick around after the press conference once we listen in. I did see somebody mention, I forget who it was, earlier in the stream, somebody mentioned my shirt. It's just a black shirt, but I did get my DM-2 patch that I just stuck onto my shirt just because I wanted to show off that I got my patch. It came in time. That sounded weird. 2 ins in a row. The DM-2 patch, you can go to thespacestore.com. If you're in the US, I don't know where you get patches if you're not in the US, but if you're in the US, thespacestore.com, that's where I got my patch from. That's where I get all my patches from. There's a bunch of places that you can get them from, but I always get them from thespacestore.com. And they have the DM-2 patch. Now this is kind of unique, a little bit unique, but there are 2 mission patches. There is a NASA mission patch, which is what this one is, and that one's available now and ready to. You can order that and get yourself a patch. The SpaceX also has their own mission patch, which I'll have on the stream on launch day. I don't have it prepared here to throw up today, but SpaceX also has their own mission patch for this mission. They don't release their mission patches for any sort of production until after. Generally, they do it after the payload is in orbit for satellite launches, and for cargo missions, usually they do it after splashdown. So I don't know when the SpaceX one will be available, because this mission is expected to be between 1 and 4 months. And so this could be a really long time waiting for that mission patch. So I don't know when the SpaceX mission patch will be available for purchase. Sebi says I removed the poll command. Did I? I don't recall. I don't recall doing that. Maybe Nightbot removed the poll command because it wasn't working the other day. No, it still says it's enabled on my end. Options, who can do it? Yeah. It says it's there. I don't know why it's not visible, but yeah, the poll command is still, at least it says it's there on my panel here. Let's see. Yeah, we still have no press conference yet. Let me just check. See a couple questions, but let me just check. I want to make sure we didn't get delayed or something that I need to know about here. Yeah, nothing. Now the other nice thing is that NASA did tweet out that they have given the go for launch on mission that will return human spaceflight to the U.S., which means that the flight readiness review that they did, that we're about to watch the press conference for, they came out with an A-OK, and we're good to go for proceeding. So I don't expect to hear any issues during this press conference, but we're just waiting on the press conference to actually start. So no other news that I've seen about this being delayed or anything like that. So, Tori, do you think there will be problems with Dragon when Bob and Doug take over controls of Dragon during their mission? That's the only part that wasn't tested on Demo 1. I mean, I don't think there would be any sort of issues that I can think of. I mean, the only thing different about Bob and Doug taking controls versus Demo 1, I mean, Demo 1 executed the commands that Bob and Doug would be doing manually. So as far as like the systems integration, it's pretty much all there. The last bit that wasn't tested was literally just the human touching the button to activate the system. The system itself was tested, and that whole touch the button to activate the system, that's something that is relatively easy to test on the ground. I mean, I'm going to super oversimplify this. I mean, I know it's way more complicated than this, but that sort of repetition and that sort of system integration, you can test pretty easily on the ground. That's not something that has to be tested in space. So that can really be hashed out on the ground. So I don't expect to see, I don't think anybody expects to see any problems on Wednesday, or else they wouldn't be launching. So no, I mean, I don't expect any issues. At least not anything major that will hear about, hopefully, there will likely be small things, which there were even small things on DM-1, on Demo 1, that they didn't really release to the public, and they still haven't released to the public, and they just said that they've made changes since Demo 1 to now. So they didn't really say, like, what changes they made, but there were all sorts of, like, minor things that really had nothing to do with the public that they actually changed between Demo 1 and Demo 2. So not only are you testing things like the manual control that you talked about, but there are also new things in the vehicle that haven't been tested at all yet, at least not in flight. So, and that will probably continue at least a little bit even after Demo 2 going into Crew 1. They'll still probably make changes after this mission as the astronauts get into it, and they can say, yeah, you know what, when I did this action, it didn't respond the way I wanted it to, or you know, that we had to activate this command, but as I was sitting in my suit and we were floating, and it was hard to get to, or you know, there's all kinds of random things that could come up that would be just little minor tweaks. You know, I use this button really frequently. Can we move that over here because it'll be easier for me to get to when I'm experiencing 4Gs during launch, stuff like that. So, and we likely won't ever know about any of those. Let's see. Everybody's saying that I talk too fast. Yeah, sorry, I get all hyped up. I wish I could slow it down, but I get talking and I get rocking. Diane and Frank say awesome over on Periscope. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm super excited for this. Does SpaceX have recovery ships in Canada and the other 49 locations? Yeah, well, there are not ships in all 50 locations, but they are strategically placed so that they can be recovered in the most likely scenarios. And then we also have, I forget which branch of I believe it's the Space Force now, or which group of the Space Force, I think it's the Space Force, that is prepared to go on a recovery operation should there need to be one that SpaceX can't get to themselves. So likely one of those like super far downrange recoveries would be a military operation. Any of the short range recovery, and actually I think just a pad abort is going to be a military recovery operation too, if there was a pad abort. I don't think that, you know, we're not going to have a pad abort, but if there was a pad abort, I think that would also be a military recovery as well. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that would be a military recovery. I don't think SpaceX is putting their personnel out for a pad abort recovery. There is the SpaceX support ship Go Searcher. I think it's Go Searcher. That is over near Pensacola, Florida, stationed there. That would be for an abort from orbit scenario. Basically, that's one of those really, really late abort scenarios that they got up and they're either in orbit or very, very close to orbit and would have to abort and come back. They have an abort site on the west coast of Florida off of Pensacola so that they can land there instead of in the Atlantic Ocean. And that's one of the reasons why I think Wednesday's weather is going to be really, really tricky for launching, because we've got that tropical disturbance coming into Florida, and not only are they going to have to worry about whether or not they can launch the rocket, but those recovery scenarios, specifically that one on the west coast of Florida, is going to be tough to get an okay to launch on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens. GVA, hey, thanks for the super chat. Are you going to stream the ULA Mars rover mission? I don't know the answer to that, but I would say probably. I guess it depends on, I don't even know when it is. I've been so consumed with this that I don't know anything else that's happening in the space world. I haven't even really been keeping up with Starship developments. When is the Mars rover planned for at this point? When are we going to make it through in 2020? I don't know when the launch is planned for right now. But yeah, I would do that. Why not? Tori, you're broadcasting for 8 hours on Wednesday. Yeah, I will. It will be a very long broadcast. I don't know the exact time. Briefing has started.
Hans Königsmann,
Oh,
Vice President of
there it is.
Build and Flight
Thank you for that.
Reliability at SpaceX. Norm Knight, Deputy Director of Flight Operations at NASA's Johnson Space Center. And Mike McAleenan, Launch Weather Officer with the 45th Weather Squadron. We will begin with opening comments from our speakers and then open it for questions. To get into the question queue, please press *1 on your phone. But first, let's hear from the teams. We'll start with Kathy Leaders. Kathy?
So first, thank you for tying in on this. We're continuing to tick off our pre-flight readiness checklist. First, the vehicle checked out very nicely in our static fire. Static fire was full duration. In addition, dry dress, we successfully completed our full crew launch day checkout. It went very smoothly and ahead of schedule. I can't tell you how moving it was for me to see Bob and Doug get in the vehicles and ride out to the pad and realize that the next time was going to be when we were getting ready to launch. Finally, today we had our launch readiness review, and so we're burning down the final paper. All the teams were go, and we're continuing to make progress towards our mission. And now the only thing we need to do is figure out how to control the weather, and I'm hoping that Mike's going to help us out with that when he starts talking. But very proud of the team. We're continuing to be vigilant and careful and make sure we do this right. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Kathy. Now we'll go to Kirk Shireman.
Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for tying in. As Kathy said, we were very happy to participate in the launch readiness review this afternoon, and very thorough review. Things are definitely progressing very well. On board the International Space Station this morning, 8:13 a.m. Eastern Time, the ISS crew, Chris Cassidy, actually captured the Free Flyer HTV, so we were really happy to do that, which was important for Demo 2, but perhaps even more important was it was at 11:49 this morning. It was successfully bolted onto ISS, which really gets it out of the way for Demo 2 to come fly. So very happy that onboard operation went well, and finally the crew couldn't go to sleep without ingressing, so they finished all the work to make sure leak checks passed and set up everything and ingressed this afternoon at 4:25. So great work on orbit. I think the on-orbit crew is definitely ready for some company. Very much looking forward to the launch this Wednesday. In addition, we had an ISS mission management team meeting this morning, which included the ISS team, but it also included all our international partners. And everyone was ready to go, so the ISS team pulled ready to support the docking of Dragon. So great work, full team participation and readiness. And aside from a little anomaly or two that the team always goes through and works down, burns down, I think everything's ready to go. So very much looking forward to good weather and a successful launch on Wednesday.
Thanks, Kirk. We'll now go to Hans Königsmann.
Yeah, thank you. And like Kathy and Kirk said already, we had a really good, successful launch readiness review, and we go for launch. I would take the opportunity and thank NASA for the opportunity to do this historic mission that brings a human spaceflight back to the U.S. and really it's really important for both SpaceX, country, and basically to some extent also humanity and exploration. So I had a couple slides prepared, which I will skip now. and
I wanted to see the visuals.
Right, so
come on.
Getting Demo 2 ready for flight was a ton of work, and it's just incredible to be here after many years of work. And I think exactly on this day 8 years ago we either launched the first one that went to the station, or we birthed on the station. I'm not totally sure about this. James told me earlier, and I forgot the detail on that. We birthed, right, on this day, yeah. So that's 8 years ago, just 8 years to some extent, and on the other side also, time flies, right? On Demo-2, we spent many years of development and an incredible amount of testing. We worked a lot with NASA to put everything through its paces. Just recalling the work we spent on parachutes, on NTO compatibility and whatnot. There was a lot of urgent and important work done over the last couple months and years, basically, and all basically concludes in the flight readiness and now in the launch readiness review going into the final launch campaign. At the static fire on Friday, the team reviewed the data over the weekend and reported back at the LRR. No showstoppers, everything looking good, and nothing that would keep us from flying. And I made it right rest on Saturday with Bob and Doug, like Kathy said, going up the tower and walking the bridge or the tunnel, the arm actually is what we call it, right? And essentially rehearsing launch day. And for me, this was a little bit of a turning point too. Yeah? When you see people going into the rocket, that is something special. It's I knew that Dragon is not somewhere in a training center or somewhere else on the ground. This is on the rocket, so that was a big deal for. I feel like it had a big impact on everybody in the control center and the team back in Hawthorne too. See the two astronauts taking the seats and start working on the panel, and you hear them basically, and you know this is coming from the rocket. That to me, like I said, it made a big difference and made it very real. And today is late load. We have a small amount of cargo. I think we're already done with that. And then on Wednesday, if the weather gods are working with us, then we have a launch at 4:33. We do have 2 backup days, and I can talk a little bit of what you can see. You will see basically Bob and Doug getting ready in their suits like 4 hours before we launch. They will drive over to LC-39 at about 3 hours before launch, T-3, and then at 2:30 they will get into the capsule, buckle in. And then the rest from there on is somewhat similar than the other launches that we have. We start polling at T-45. We will arm the escape system at that time, and then we begin fueling. The arm retracts, we begin fueling at T-35, and then from then on it's the same automation that fuels the vehicle and launches it on time. We have, on orbit, we have 19 hours, if I remember this correctly. There will be a number of orbit raising burns and circularization burns. The one thing that I also remember is there's a manual test, flight test, basically, for half an hour just before we dock. And that's going to be super interesting to see that. And then we will dock and open the hatch I think 2 hours later, if I remember this correctly. Departure is, eventually, that schedule is a little bit in flux, and obviously NASA will tell us when we're ready to go. Anywhere between, let's see if I get this right, 6 weeks and 16 weeks, something in that order. Team will get back into Dragon, don their suits, undock, and fly a couple hours and come back and land on the coast in the Atlantic. Basically, it's different from what Cargo Dragon landed in Pacific. We switched over to the Atlantic for landing now because it's closer to KSC and easier to process. And And yeah, I'm looking very much forward to all of that. Again, thanks NASA. Really appreciate this. Also like to thank the SpaceX team, working super hard over many years. You know, in Hawthorne, our main headquarters, as much as in McGregor, our test site, and then of course here at the Cape, where they integrate and launch the vehicle. And also, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here without Elon, so I want to thank him personally too. And that's it from me.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Hans. We'll now go to Norm Knight.
Well, let's see. Good evening. Really good review today, and from a crew perspective, we were very happy with the discussions that took place, the thoroughness of the review. We're definitely ready to press forward. The crew had a good dry dress, as Hans said yesterday. That was exciting to walk through and see. It was kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's just to make sure that everything was ready to go, and it turned out very well. So we're very happy with that, and again, looking forward to going forward. Kind of give you a little more detail on Doug and Bob's schedule. Today and tomorrow, they had a series, or will have a series of technical briefs, some follow-up discussions with folks on technical issues. They'll spend some time with their family and friends, which is good, and then obviously get some good night's sleep and prep for launch. Leading up to Wednesday, launch day, they'll get up around 9 a.m. Eastern time. They'll go through a series of medical checks after that. They'll get their breakfast, get prepped, go into the weather briefing around 12:20 in the afternoon, and then, as Hans said, jump into suit up, which will be real exciting shortly after 1 o'clock. They'll depart for the pad around 2:30 in the afternoon, and of course, all leading up to a launch around 4:33 in the afternoon. Things are looking real good. We've been very pleased with the fact that this vehicle looks really clean. The review today, we worked a few issues, but overall it was really good, and we're thankful for that. And I guess I'll just say, you know, we were all here working this Memorial Day, but all of us are very thankful for and honor those in military service who really have paid the ultimate sacrifice for their families, for the veterans, who all provide the umbrella of protection that allow us to do the great things that we do here as a collective team. And because of you, NASA and our commercial partners are going to restore human launch capability back to U.S. soil, which is very exciting to us. So it's a great day, and we're looking forward to the next 2 days leading up to launch.
Thank you, Norm.
I'm going to try to put up. I'm going to try to put up the people that are speaking.
Right, well, good evening. First, I want to point out that we're in the weather sales business, not production, so you'll have to talk to somebody else about that part of it. But I will tell you that we're very happy we're not launching today. We've had nearly 2 inches of rain so far along the spaceport, and we're not quite done yet. So it'll be very hard to have this bad weather coming Wednesday. We, of course, have been watching Wednesday closely for as long as the models have gone out that far, for at least 10 days. And it's really been a strange brew of guidance from these models. They have shifted, and it's really a dynamic situation that's developing across Florida. The National Hurricane Center has just issued a 20% chance of this wave that's moving across Florida to develop into a tropical low as it transits along the eastern coast here of Florida into the Georgia, South Carolina area. So it'll be a tight balance of where that low goes exactly, how strong it gets between launch weather versus recovery weather versus abort weather. So it's just going to be difficult to try to match all those together. But I will tell you that certainly has been trending better over the last day or two for launch weather. If I was to issue the forecast today, right now, we would probably be down to 40% chance of violation. It does look like this low is going to clear out some of that moisture that we are experiencing at this moment, and should pull it off towards the east and north. So we have a little bit more rain to go here, and maybe another round of afternoon thunderstorms with the first leftover moisture tomorrow. But Tuesday afternoon looks like a much less coverage. So we have some hope for launch day, and that low is going to be much further away, and maybe the ridge will build back in by our backup day. So we do have some hope, and that's the trend is heading our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We will now transition to taking questions. Again, to get into the question queue, please press *1 on your phone. To ensure as many people as possible get the opportunity to participate in today's call, please ask only one question per person. When called upon, please reiterate your name, affiliation, and to whom you're directing your question. We'll now open the floor for questions.
Thank you. Our first question comes from Bill Harwood with CBS News. Your line is open.
Yeah, hi. It's Bill Harwood. I have a question for Mike, if I can. Can you go into a little bit of detail about how you guys compute or calculate, add in the abort weather, the downrange weather, for this launch? I mean, when you guys put a percentage out, I don't think it includes that, does it? Or does it? And how do you come up with a number, or how do you decide it's okay to go given multiple sites downrange where you could possibly end up in the water in the unlikely event of a problem? Thanks.
Sure. Well, I will tell you that this probability, you're right, is only including launch commit criteria for liftoff. We do, when we issue this forecast, it's posted to our website, shows kind of just a risk of the other kind of factors like upper level winds or first stage recovery. Between Spaceflight Meteorology Group at Houston and the SpaceX ingesting model data, we provide some guidance and some weather parameters to the SpaceX team, and they calculate the probability of all those abort points. So that's really not part of this launch forecast, but I will pass it to Hans if he wants to add any more about how that forecast gets together.
I guess I have to take it now. Yeah, we take Mike's data, and we have a really complicated way of weighing different locations depending on how much risk they have in terms of an escape, for one, and then also for the landing there are special parameters, wind, wave, and wave direction, and all these things, and then some of these individually have to go green and be a go, and then on the entire launch corridor we have like a common risk number that we use to basically make an assessment and then get to a go, no-go decision. Just to give you an idea, the briefing this morning on the weather had 65-ish slides going through this, and it took an hour. So it's a lengthy process to get to the best result, getting the safest slide that we can possibly get with the current weather.
I think I showed the wrong mic, by the way, for one guy that was talking.
Our next
it's this guy.
Chris Davenport with the Washington
I think that's
Post.
him.
Your line is open.
Oh, hey guys, thanks so much for doing this. It's Chris Davenport from the Washington Post. Hope the weather clears up for you guys. Question, follow-up from something Kirk said after the FRR. He mentioned, I think the word he used was maybe a concern that Russia had after Demo 1, and there were some changes made before Demo 2. I was wondering if you could just offer some more details on what the concern was and what the changes were that allayed those. Thanks very much.
Sure. Well, so the concern, because Russia is part of the International Space Station, and hopefully, ultimately, they'll have their crew flying on Dragon. They've been following along the entire process. But so we look at the nominal vehicle design. We also look at failures, and there was a failure scenario, a very low probability of a failure scenario associated with Dragon, and it didn't have. In that failure scenario, there was a potential of colliding with ISS. So in Demo 1, because it was such a low probability, what we decided to do was close off some hatches to protect the ISS in this low probability of occurrence. And we talked with SpaceX, and they agreed that they would make a modification. So they actually made a modification to the design of the Dragon so that if that low probability of occurrence occurred, they actually had a backup system that would then fire some thrusters and move the Dragon away. So that's basically it. There was a failure the first time that could cause the Dragon to basically be uncontrolled, or basically we call it a ballistic trajectory, but basically coasting in. We accepted it for the Demo 1, and between Demo 1 and today, SpaceX has designed that system, implemented it, and verified it. So a tremendous effort by SpaceX, and our Russian colleagues are very pleased with that additional protection.
Okay, next question.
Our next question comes from Amanda Maley with ABC News. Your line is open.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time. Just given all the concerns about weather, how late on Wednesday can you make the decision whether or not to either delay or cancel the launch?
That's a good question.
Okay, let me think about this. So it's usually when we have a satellite to launch, then we go sometimes all the way down the wire, right, to the last minute, and then Mike says no, and then we don't go. In this case, we don't want to do that because we would expose the crew to risk. That would be unnecessary. So we're going to weigh this like in like 6 hours before, 4 hours before, and then I guess the final call comes at the end at 45 minutes when we're about to arm the escape system, and that is basically by that time we have come to a conclusion whether we go and no go.
So they're not going to do the whole wait until all the way down to like T minus 30 seconds.
Our next question comes from Marcia Dunn with Associated Press. Your line is open.
Yes, hello. This question is for Hans, please. Hans, the stakes have never been higher for SpaceX, and you talked about how important this mission is to the company and also to humanity and exploration, and I'd like a little more elaboration. What does this flight mean for SpaceX, and what do you see it as how it paves the way for human exploration at large? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. Yeah, I mean, we have been founded, with the idea of human spaceflight and basically in our basic laws, so to speak. And then, if you recall, the first cargo Dragon, which clearly was a cargo Dragon, we put a window on so that people would not forget about it. And so everything in our trajectory is towards that particular moment to launch people on a spaceship, and it's a huge step, obviously, going from cargo and from even expensive cargo and important cargo to launching two people that are dads, as we call them, and have families, kids, wives, and spouses, and everything. So it puts yourself, basically, you projected yourself, and you think yourself you would be now on this rocket, right? And you put yourself in their shoes, basically, or in their helmets, and that changes the equation pretty dramatic, actually. And when NASA told us that a couple of years ago, I was at the beginning, okay, we got to deal with that, right? And as we get closer and closer, I realized, yeah, that actually makes a big difference. And every once in a while, I'm pretty sure that's same for everybody working at SpaceX. We have to just keep our head low and work the problem, and not freeze and light of that responsibility, which we take very serious. So I think at the end of the day, we ended up with a really great vehicle and great rocket. I hope everything will go smooth, and also the weather will play along, and this will be a successful mission. And we learned a lot along the way.
Next question.
Yes, our next question comes from Joey Roulette with Reuters. Your line is open.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Question for anyone who'd like to answer. I was wondering if somebody could give a timeline or kind of like a background on what Bob and Doug will be doing in the hours leading up to liftoff. I think someone said they'll be heading out to the pad at 2:30, or I don't know if they would be going into the vehicle at 2:30. Just some clarity on that timeline would be great. Thanks.
Okay, this is Norm. I'll give you some more of the details. These are approximate times, but again, the crew gets up around 9 a.m. Their weather brief, this is Eastern time, their weather brief will be around 12:20 p.m. They'll start doing suit up shortly after that. They will start walking out, departing the building to head to the pad around 1, maybe 1:15 in the afternoon. They will ingress, as Hans said, around 2 p.m. and then the hatch closes, I think, around 2:38 in prep for a 4:33 p.m. launch.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Next question.
Yes, our next question comes from Eric Berger with Ars Technica. Your line is open.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and looking forward to the launch on Wednesday. I'm wondering if someone may speak to the backup launch date, why it's 3 days after the original launch date, and then I think Hans mentioned that there was a second backup date as well. Is that the next day, or when is that? Thanks very much.
It's a good question. Wondered that too.
It's through the second backup, the third opportunity is the day after. It's on the 31st, and I think the difference, the two days in between is just a matter of phasing, and how the orbital mechanics work out. There's some other factors that play into that too, traffic on the station and so on and so forth. But my understanding is that's the next opportunity. The one on the 30th is a 31-hour transit, I believe, and so is the one on the 31st, if I'm, plus minus a little bit. So it just happened to be coincidence that there's 2 days in between where we can't launch.
Interesting that the 30th is different phasing time.
Our next question comes from David Curley with Discovery. Your line is open.
Thanks, everybody. I think this is for Kirk. Both Starliner and Dragon have hypergolic fuel. Has a craft ever docked with station with hypergolic fuel? And Steve Jurziak said something about fire suppression issues. Was that in the capsule or on the pad? Thank you.
So actually, every vehicle that's docked to ISS is docked with hypergolic. So Shuttle, of course, had hypergolic fuel when it came. The Russian Soyuz vehicles, not only do they have hypergolic fuels, they actually transfer it to ISS. So ISS itself has hypergolic fuels stored on it and uses it for raising its orbit. So dealing with hypergolics is a very normal situation. And the fire suppression was the issue that we were talking. By the way, there's all kinds of fire suppression on the ISS, on the Dragon, and on the ground, but the one that was being discussed last time, I think, was on the Dragon itself. And I could let maybe Hans talk to that issue.
So, because we worked it pretty hard. I mean, it's really about. We had two sets of requirements. We have requirements on the vehicle that says you have to build a vehicle that has materials that aren't flammable, right? That's our number one control to fire, is to have a vehicle that's not flammable. Within, the amounts of oxygen that we typically have in the environment. But then we also had a requirement that we wanted to have a fire suppression system. And so what happened, we did some testing over this last month, and we ended up finding out in particular areas the fire suppression system didn't work as well as we wanted it to work. And so one of the things we had to go do is to go look at those different areas and then really evaluate the ability for the vehicle and the design to be robust to any kind of fire mechanisms in those areas, and then also really understand the materials in those areas to make sure that we were very confident that that those areas were not going to be susceptible to having a fire from a design perspective. So those are the kinds of things we had to work through, and we'll be working with SpaceX over, this next period of time to have the fire suppression system work better in those areas. But that's kind of normal development, us working through it. We'll also learn on orbit how things work a little bit better, and it'll help us through this test flight be able to better update and improve our designs.
I don't like when they talk about fire. It just
Thank you.
gives you memories of that whole Apollo 1 situation.
Our next question comes from Emery Kelly with Florida Today. Your line is open.
Hey, folks. Thanks for doing this today. Hans, this question's for you. I know it sounds like there are possibly, you mentioned 2 opportunities for the astronauts to take manual control of Crew Dragon. I believe one is far out and one is closer. Could you talk a little bit about, how much freedom, I guess you could say, they'll have while they're doing that, and what exactly they'll do during those manual opportunities? Thanks.
Appreciate the question. I think actually, I don't want to pass it over to Norm, but he has a much better idea of what they do during those times. From our perspective, it's a test to verify that the manual control works, and that we have the opportunity, if there's any issue with the autonomous system, that the astronauts can override it and basically correct for it.
Okay, thanks, Hans. Yeah, there are actually 2 manual flight tests. As the vehicle starts approaching station in the far field, the crew will take manual control and verify that it works. They'll orient the attitude to a certain degree just to make sure that they can do that. As they get closer, as they come up to station in the latter portions of the rendezvous profile, they come up on the V-bar in front of station as they start moving in, and then they will do what's called a near-field test as well, and get kind of a feel for how that system is working, the manual control, and then they put it back in auto and press on in. So there are 2 of those manual flight tests, and that give you a pretty high level on what those entail.
I think what's really cool is Bob and Doug have been on this cadre. They've been working with the team, working with the SpaceX folks to really work and kind of perfect this design. And here, it's why they're on this test mission, right? Because where they're going to get to then practice and use the technique that they've been working on for the last 5 years in space and make sure that, will their dream become a reality on how the vehicle works, right? It's why the concept of having this cadre and having this team work together and then getting them to actually test drive the system is pretty cool.
Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Lauren Grush, The Verge. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. I was wondering if you could walk us through the various checkouts and analyses the astronauts will be doing with the Crew Dragon while it's docked to the space station and on orbit. Anything that you'll be looking for, testing for when it's up there? Thanks.
I guess I can start a little bit and then Norm. So one of the things we definitely need to test in space is ECLSS, our environmental control life support system, and there are many things you can test on the ground, but you can't test them under microgravity for like many hours. So obviously that's going to be important. We want to see that the temperatures are stable, humidity is controlled, and carbon dioxide is under control, oxygen is under control, and all these things. Like I said, you can test 99% here, but you got to test the last percent or whatever the fraction is in microgravity. That's one of the first things they do. There's other things in terms of communication and and how the whole capsule basically works. That can't follow after that. I don't know exactly what the timetable is on that, but they also only have 19 hours, and on top of that, they actually want to sleep on board too, right? So it's going to be full of tests, and time will fly basically on the way. Norm?
Yeah, the good news is that a lot of the demonstrations were performed with the Demo 1 flight test, which was one of the reasons that we were, all happy that vehicle got up and could work off some of these demonstration tests to verify that the rendezvous prox ops were understood better, the thermal was understood better, the docking and attach phase. What we're looking at here is, again, a lot of changes with Demo 2. And as Hans said, we're checking out a lot of these things, everything from the suit that the flight crew will be wearing, how that functions in zero-G, how you get in and out of it, how it functions as far as cooling, the vehicle itself, the ergonomics, the crew displays, the rendezvous docking manual control, or the manual control going into rendezvous. And again, once they get attached, Dragon will be part of and integrated into the International Space Station. It is now part of this bigger unit, so it has to function on board as an integrated module. So there's going to be some tests and checkout relative to putting Dragon in a quiescent state, waking it up, making sure that its systems come back to life as they should, and then of course while it's docked, just its overall performance leading up to entry, and then again entry, the deorbit and entry part of flight test as well, on getting the crew back home safely, and again rejoining them with their families. So this is really an end-to-end. It's a flight test, and we're looking at a lot of things. So again, very exciting.
Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Kenneth Chang with New York Times. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering if you could give more details about the conditions you need for the aborts, the weather and the ocean conditions, and is this something that stretches for hundreds or thousands of miles across the Atlantic? And how do you find those conditions?
We can share that. Let me start a little bit. So there's different types of weather condition that would cause an abort. Yeah, there's a range safety requirements. For example, thick clouds. The clouds shouldn't be thick. There's other requirements that are related to I guess lightning, and so there's a whole range of safety requirements that we need to comply with, and those are actually the same for every launch. They're not different here than from any other launch. And there's a type of weather requirements that are related to the rocket. Upper level winds have to be in a certain range, and we very carefully look at balloons and measure the wind, and then we know what this is, and then we basically thread the needle along the upper level winds to make this a safe flight. Let's see, what else do we have? We have, like we mentioned earlier, we have escape weather along the ground path in case something happens. We want to make sure that Dragon capsule can land, so the waves should be not too rough, the wind should not be too fast, as an example. And that's a very complicated number that we basically add together. There's buoys along the way, there's global weather pattern, there's models that are similar like what airplanes use, right? And that's how we basically integrate this whole risk along the way and come up with an assessment. There's also obviously an onshore component on wind that's important to us in case we have a pad abort. We also have a wave requirement for landing the booster and the wind requirement for landing the booster. So if you stack all of this up, that's why this is actually turning into a lot of weather science, and that's why we have Mike. Okay.
The weather's going to be super complicated. I can't imagine.
Next question, please.
Yes, our next question comes from Emily Speck with WKMG. Your line is open.
Hi there. Thanks so much for doing this, you guys. A couple people could answer this question. During the dress rehearsal, I saw the SpaceX employees in the white room, and they had these really interesting black clean suits on. Could you kind of talk a little bit about that and how working with SpaceX to prepare the astronauts for flight is maybe different with a commercial partner, or if at all?
I like those black suits. The little black bunny suits that they had on for processing.
I think, you know, we're in a unique environment, right? One of the things that we have to be very careful about, and even if we weren't during this COVID period, is making sure that the crew's health is stable. We actually call it a health stabilization plan, and making sure that the crew is healthy and isn't going to be bringing some potential virus or anything up to the crew on station, right? And so during normal times, this is a very serious process that people go through, and obviously in this period of COVID, it's even more serious. So those folks are outfitted in a particular way, really to ensure that the crew's protected. And you know, Norm talked about the crew. The crew's been in quarantine now for 3 weeks, and during that period of time, we've been having to be very careful with them. They're like doing the ultimate quarantine. Some of us have been staying at home, but these folks, you know, and all the people that have been interacting with them and working with them are suited and checked and nose swabbed and tested, and to make sure that Bob and Doug are going up to station safe. And so what you saw yesterday was the crew being outfitted in a way that is really about protecting Bob and Doug, and we prefer to call it looking like ninjas, that they look like ninjas there. So
SpaceX ninjas.
Because, you know, with the SpaceX folks, you got to have it be looking cool, but they're really wearing outfits that are protecting Bob and Doug from them and any interaction.
I like
Thank you so much.
Like that she mentioned they have to look cool. Because
Next question, please.
That's probably the real reason
Yes,
why they're
the next
black.
question comes from Dave Mosher with Business Insider. Your line is open.
Thank you for doing this, and best of luck on a launch. So this is for Hans. Your boss told Aviation Week, I think today, that his biggest worry, though very unlikely, was a rotation of the capsule during reentry and apparently some kind of overheating of the Draco escape thrusters. I'm curious what the number one thing is for you that keeps you up at night, however unlikely. And then as a sort of lighthearted exit, I'm really curious, my colleague is, where is it and what is it? Is it a hose hookup? Or is it more of a throne like on the shuttle, or something we haven't seen before? Thank you.
What was he asking? Where is what?
Oh, okay. I'm not gonna. I don't know the potty answer to the potty question, so I'm going to skip that. But I can. Let's see. On the risk front, I mean, I work a lot with the risk on both vehicles. That is basically my job. I don't think there's anything that sticks out particularly. There's always things that we've worried, like, for example, the parachutes that are like discrete events that you can't really easily test. You pack those parachutes, and you pack them, you know, as carefully as you can, and then you randomly test them and do all these things. But at the end of the day, the ones that you actually packed and that are on the vehicle, you can't test those because then they are unpacked, right? So by definition, there's certain things that are really, I mean, other areas that are hard to test are pyrotechnics, right? I mean, you can only test like the brothers and sisters of the pyros that are on the vehicle, but you cannot test the one that are actually on the vehicle itself, for example. Then there's, there's a whole slew of valves. There's like 200 valves on Falcon 9, and they all need to work. There's redundancy on it, but there are some things like there's one MVAC right after all, and then this engine has to start. And there's like everything on the on the MVAC is doubled and triple, but at the end of the day, it's one thrust chamber and one nozzle, and all these things are boiling down to there's one capsule, right? There's not a second capsule. There's one air in there and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of things that you just carefully design and take all the precautions and then you go forward with that. I'm pretty well. I shouldn't say I'm pretty confident. I should say I'm pretty confident. We've done so many Falcon 9 launches, right? I mean, I feel pretty good about the rocket here, and so from that perspective, where I look at is actually stuff that's new in the vehicle, yeah. And in this case, the new part is Dragon. Crew Dragon rather. Crew Dragon has flown very well on the Demo 1 mission, so that takes a lot of the angst and the concern away on this mission. Actually, that was great. That mission was so super smooth and it autonomously docked and undocked and came back and landed and did everything and it was so that basically gave us great confidence in this design too. So, but there's always things that you like I said, the Eagler system, you will test this the first time on a microgravity for an extended period with Bob and Doug in there. Yeah? So those things are what keeps us up at night, basically.
Thank you.
I mean, to add to that a little bit, yeah, I'm at the point right now where I'm actually worried about the weather, and that's a good sign. So.
Thanks.
It sounds like they're
Our
all
next
in
question comes from Irene Klotz with
in the press
Aviation
room
Week. Your line is open.
together.
Thanks very much. For Hans, how many vessels are going to be dispatched for both to support abort scenarios and for booster recovery? And have they already left, or is that something that's going to happen tomorrow? And are you likely to make a call about the weather based on the ship's deployment?
I think the ship's already left.
So we are about the drone ship left Cape Canaveral, but it's parked further north right now and waiting for the weather to be better. The other ships, I believe, are the one on the Florida West Coast is on its way, basically, and the other one I think is getting ready. So I think the fleet, as we call it, is about to get ready and move, but and partly already on the way. But that all assumes that Wednesday weather will clear up. Otherwise, they will just sit in their spot for a couple more days.
Thanks. And what about the NASA and any DoD ships? So how many total?
So we have 2 C-17s that are ready to go. We also have additional aircraft in New York and actually in England getting ready to help with if we need to do any rescue force locations. And we've been doing, our Det-3 folks have been doing training, water training and getting ready so that the PJs are ready if we have to do a rescue, that everybody's ready to go.
Thanks very much. Good luck.
Next question, please.
Yes, the next question comes from Stephen Clark with Space Flight Now. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Stephen Clark, Space Flight Now. To follow up on a couple earlier questions about weather, again, just curious. You have to have looked at this by now, I presume. How is the weather in sea states? How's the forecast looking for those downrange in the Atlantic on Wednesday right now, based on models, I guess? And if I could sneak a quick second one in, what's your next launch date after May 31st? Thanks.
Well, as far as the weather goes, it's it's getting a little bit far out to have a lot of confidence, but it certainly looks like the guidance is shaping up that the 30th and 31st look much less dynamic than what we have going on with the tropical low development across Florida and all that. So overall, those look like a better probability of launching and lower risk numbers across the Atlantic.
Yeah, and regarding the launch, the next launch after Demo-2, it's going to be Starlink 7. And it's
I don't think that's what he
at
meant.
the very beginning of June. I don't know the exact date. It will also slip day for day, and it also depends a little bit on the availability on the drone ships when we can fly that.
I think he was asking what the next
Steve,
backup
for you,
was.
it's the launch time is 4:33:33.
4:33:33, down to the second.
Next question, please.
Our next question comes from Marina Corin with The Atlantic. Your line is open.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the update today. This question is for whoever knows the answer. Might be Norm. Norm, you said Bob and Doug will get up at 9 a.m. on Wednesday and have breakfast. What are they having for breakfast on the big day?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know what they're having for breakfast, but I assure you that our food service that are provided for the astronauts are really superior. And whatever they're having, I'm sure is very, very good. We have an opportunity to sample some of that stuff, and I can attest that it's well. So.
Okay. Will you let me know when you find out?
I will do so.
Thank you. Good luck.
Next question, please.
Yes, our next question comes from Christopher Costa with KHOU 11 News.
Hey there, everybody. Chris Costa from KHOU 11 News in Houston, Texas. First of all, just wanted to say good luck to all of you in the flight coming up on Wednesday. The big question I had was, what is it like to have humans, crew, operating a spacecraft that is operated by touchscreen? What's been your confidence in that as this has gone forward in its testing and verification? And how are the astronauts feeling about using it? And is this the first time that touchscreen has been used in a human crewed mission?
Let's see, I'll jump in and then Hans, you can follow up. Touchscreens are, I mean, they're new, and you know, I would say that kind of winding back to the initial design, there was some reluctance with the test screen, you know, with the touch screens. How are these going to work? How can you have control of the vehicle with these things? Are they going to be reliable? But that technology over years has been proven. There was a lot of testing and evaluation that went into the ergonomics of those, the placement of what's on the displays, how those displays are presented to the crew, and then how the crew interacts with those displays. So, you know, over years, those things have been perfected. SpaceX has adjusted the design a little bit for the ergonomics, which was beneficial. And through training over and over, the crew has become comfortable with those, and we're comfortable with them flying. So, Hans, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. Two things. I drive a car with a touchscreen of a similar size, electric, of course. And
a Tesla, maybe?
I've found at the beginning you have to get used to it, actually. But then you get into a technique that basically you put your hand around it, and that gives you the range of your thumb basically to press certain things. And after a couple of days driving the car, it gets basically automatic. And the same thing, I'm a pilot and fly airplanes that have touch screens too. That's actually a lot harder than on the car because sometimes it gets bumpy in airplanes. Now, if I translate that into a spacecraft, that should be a lot quieter, at least after the launch. So I would love to really test this and get an assessment between the three different categories of vehicles. But I guess I have to refer to basically asking Bob and Doug after the flight how it went.
But I do think people need to understand there's really, for everything that is in a dynamic situation, they have different controls.
Right.
So
Exactly.
they really had to think through, hey, under what conditions do we use touch screens? Under what conditions do we use buttons or have mechanical controls? And so the teams, and part of Bob and Doug and the team being there and being able to use their experience, they can talk about what parts of flight are dynamic so that they can have those additional controls and help them out.
And yeah, Kathy, to your point, absolutely right. I mean, there's a couple super critical things. whatever, parachute deploy and things like that. Those are buttons and they're traditional buttons and secured and so that you don't bump into them and move them accidentally. So that's totally clear. I mean, the big advantage on the touch screen is also that you have a certain area and you can change what's on the screen, right? You can completely go from like the air condition over to the radio, over to vehicle systems without having like 3 displays at the same time. And you have so much more redundancy if you have 3 screens like we have. You basically need one of them at the end to control all functions on the spacecraft. So I personally think it's great. It's technology that will work well, and I'm looking forward to the results.
I like that he mentioned the 2 critical systems, air conditioning and radio.
Yes, our last question comes from Andrea Leinfelder with Houston Chronicle. Your line is open.
Hi, guys. Thanks again for making the time. Good luck this week. So I saw the tweet today from Johnson Space Center about like the mission controls, and this is something obviously from Houston we've been focusing on. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. I know there's a very collaborative work between the 3 controls, but basically mission or SpaceX team in Firing 4 leads the countdown, and then SpaceX in Hawthorne leads, once the engines ignite all the way up through launch. And then Houston's Johnson Space Center leads as you approach the space station. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Yes, that's a fair way to characterize it. I would just say on the launch piece, there's also a NASA team. It's a mission management team that's working in concert with SpaceX because to be go for a launch, NASA has to have a go, SpaceX has to have a go, and the range, 45th Space Squadron has to have a go as well. So all 3 of those are required. So, but yeah, your characterization of that was correct.
Okay, so it'd be better to say SpaceX and NASA teams in Firing Room 4, then engines ignite, goes to SpaceX and Hawthorne, and then as it approaches the space station, Houston Johnson Space Center?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's also,
okay.
I mean, it's interesting. I've been doing this for many years now, and between the handover is so smooth between the teams, and the way they cooperate is basically like this would be one room, and we have cameras. We can see the other room basically, and get a sense of what the vibe is basically in the room, and if there's any huddles in the corner or stuff like that. So I feel like this is basically a virtual environment that makes it one big control room.
But Andrea, just to be specific, SpaceX does have a launch team working in Firing Room 4. SpaceX does have a mission control team at Hawthorne, and then of course there's the ISS mission control team in Houston. And it's roles and responsibilities for each, as you articulated, up to the point that they get close to station, and then they're integrated into station as part of the overall mission control team from Houston. But we're all working together.
Yeah, gotcha. But so both SpaceX and NASA and Firing Room 4, though.
Well, it's a NASA.
Or it is SpaceX.
It's not really a flight control team. It's a management team. So there's a NASA launch manager that provides the go for NASA. SpaceX has their team and Hans, correct me if I'm wrong, flight control team with their launch director that is working in concert with Hawthorne to give a go, and then the range. If the range is good, the range provides a go. But SpaceX is controlling the vehicle. There's no fluff about that.
Yeah, the launch director is here in Firing 4. And by the way, it's an honor to be in this room. I mean, this is the old Apollo and shuttle control launch center basically, and it always amazes me when I go into this building. And the mission director for Dragon from the SpaceX side is in Hawthorne. Yeah.
Is that it? Did we lose him? What happened?
Okay, that's all the time we have for today. Our next event is at 10 a.m. tomorrow with NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, Kennedy Space Center Director Bob Cabana, and NASA astronauts Jel Lindgren and Nicole Mann. This event, originally planned for the countdown clock, will now be inside the Kennedy Auditorium due to weather. We will have a phone bridge available for media to dial in and ask questions. Please send a note to ksc-newsroom@mail.nasa.gov no later than 1 hour prior to the event. NASA's SpaceX Demo-2 mission is targeting a launch to the International Space Station on Wednesday, May 27th at 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time at Launch Complex 39A from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We will have live launch coverage starting at 12:15 p.m. We will have more to come on this important mission, so follow us online, through social media, and NASA television. You can also learn more about the mission at www.nasa.gov/commercial-crew. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
Thank you for your participation.
So,
you may disconnect at this time.
I think that's it. I think we're good to go. So we got our mission briefing there. It's all set and good to go. So they got the go to actually continue on. Let's get some little chill background music here. So teams are go to proceed with launch on Wednesday, and it sounds like the biggest issue is going to be weather so far. So weather is really, and I was kind of just clicking around trying to give you guys something to look at since that was an audio only press conference. It wasn't originally planned to be an audio only press conference. It was supposed to be a regular press conference. It's in the press center. It sounded like they were all in the press center. They just didn't bring the press in. Maybe for the whole COVID-19 pandemic, they might have said, "Hey, you guys just stay home. We're not going to bring you in. We'll do it as an audio conference." Could be. And it sounds like that even Hans Koenigsmann was surprised by that because he had slides prepared to show us all. So yeah, that was originally planned to be a regular press conference where we'd actually see people talking, but they changed that like 20 minutes before I started this broadcast. So it was last minute switch up. So Space Isaac on Twitch says, do you personally think weather will delay the launch? I think there is a very good chance of having a weather delay. So, I mean, I hate to jinx things, but you know, it's not looking good for weather on Wednesday for a number of reasons. But the thing is, they're at a 60% chance no go, 40% chance go. So that means there's still a 40% chance that they might launch. It's just a little bit less than 50%, which is basically a coin toss. But yeah, they're looking at, this is the mission, the forecast, and the way they do this forecast is kind of, it might be backwards the way you're thinking, but this number here, this is 60% chance of violating weather constraints. So that means that 60% chance no go, 40% chance of go. And then they basically say the primary concerns, let's see, it's hard to point my finger and look at the screen at the same time. This way. The primary concerns, flight through precipitation, thick cloud layer rule, cumulus cloud rule. Basically, there's a storm a-coming. Even the National Hurricane Center issued a warning about a tropical disturbance that's heading towards Florida, or that's practically in Florida right now. So if we look at, this is the current radar, and it's this bit right here. Now it's not a tropical storm. It's not going to organize itself into a tropical storm. And you can even let's see, will it show it on air pressure? Yeah, it kind of shows it. You get a little bit of a low pressure area here. But basically it's precipitation and radar here that they're concerned about. So now this is current radar. This was not great, but where was it? Precipitation for the 27th at 5 p.m. This is what's concerning. Here's your precipitation expectations for 5 p.m., which is about 30 minutes after launch on the 27th. Now, there's not a lot of precipitation right at the Cape, but you can see there is a little bit of precipitation, and this is over the course of 3 hours. So they only need like a 30-minute window of no precipitation, no lightning within a certain radius. in order to launch. But they're not only launching, they got to plan for all those abort scenarios. You've got, and look at all this lightning here. I mean, the crew would have to fly directly through this, and imagine if they had to abort and they'd be landing right here in a lightning storm. That wouldn't be good. So that's the kind of stuff that would be problematic, I think, for Wednesday. Now, let's fast forward a little bit. We'll look at Thursday, Saturday, which is the backup window. Still not a great, this is still, like, they're still calling for, probably should back this up a little bit because the launch window, I think, is a little bit earlier. Oh, I can't back it up. I can only go 2 p.m. Yeah, well, the launch window is a little bit earlier, but still, you've got this precipitation here. You know, if you can get this pushed on shore, I guess it's pushed, let's see, this way, push it that way. Yeah, whatever. That's the concern is, because they're going to have to launch almost right through that. Now, this might not be as bad. This is Saturday the 30th, because the flight path is a little bit further to the south here. It might be okay. And this is going to be traveling, this precipitation here, you can see kind of the wind patterns here. This is going to be traveling up the east coast. So, anyways, that's the biggest concern is going to be weather. Not only launch weather, but also recovery weather is going to be a huge concern. They're going to look at 50 different locations for weather. Let's go back to the 27th. They're going to be looking at weather from Cape Canaveral. It's going to follow this path up the coast, and then it's going to curve over here. It's what's the ISS? 52 degree inclination, or it's like 51.6 degrees, isn't it, or something like that? Basically meaning the highest it's going to get is 51 or 52 degrees latitude, and then it'll curve back over here, and then it head towards Ireland area. And then at that point, that's basically the end of their abort trajectories that are possible, because at that point, they're going to be in orbit. But they also they're looking at abort scenarios that would be potentially, you've got to keep in mind, there's an abort scenario that could put them in the Gulf of Mexico, an abort scenario that could bring them back to the Atlantic Ocean. You've got the abort scenarios for the Atlantic Ocean all the way up the flight path. Whole bunch of things factoring in. So anyways, Wednesday, whoa, what just happened? Wednesday is not looking great, but it's not terrible. It's not like a 10% chance of launch. It's 40%. 40% is okay. It could still happen. I'm not completely writing it off right now. Just saying it's looking sketchy. Plan for Wednesday. Don't be surprised if it moves to Saturday or Sunday. There you go. Does NASA have their own weather satellites? Well, they don't. NASA doesn't directly operate the satellites, but you've got the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that has our main satellites that they're providing weather for nationwide. So yeah, NASA doesn't directly operate the satellites. They pull the information from NOAA. Josh, what's up, dude? What else do we got on the YouTube comments? A couple people asking if the astronauts can bring beer onto the ISS. I don't know that they have that on the ISS, but I guess I don't know that they don't have it. So I'm not sure. What is the site where he's watching the wind? This is VentuSky. You can kind of see it up here in the top corner. VentuSky is what I'm using for the weather right now. You can also type in the YouTube chat, !weather. It'll give you a direct link should give you a direct link right to Cape Canaveral with the 27th already pulled up, so all you have to do is just mess with what you want to play with there. What else did we miss? If weather's going to be bad, is Dragon equipped with umbrellas? Well, they have those big giant parachutes, but I don't think they're going to use those as umbrellas. think we got most of those things. I don't know. It's tough to remember. I was trying to go back through all the comments during the press conference there. Tough to remember what you said. So if I missed something, apologize for that. But anyways, so this is weather we're looking at. I also showed while the press conference was going on. We looked at this on Friday. This is the flight path. So to give you reference, what we were just talking about weather-wise. So here's where here's where the flight is going to go on Wednesday, or potentially Wednesday. It's starting here, Launch Complex 39A, Cape Canaveral, Florida. That's the big first launch complex where they launched Apollo from. That's where Apollo 11 was launched from. Famous moon landing, heard about it. So they're launching from Pad 39A. Apollo launched there, Space Shuttle launched there, and now Crew Dragon launching from there. They're going northeast to meet up with the International Space Station. The first stage booster will make a landing attempt and will land at sea on the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You, right about in this region here. So that's where the drone ship will be positioned. Now, Hans mentioned during the press conference that the drone ship right now is a little bit further north of there to wait out some of the current weather conditions. And then it will continue up as here. The different colors here of the flight path is basically powered flight versus coasting flight. So this is powered flight. Your first stage separation is way down here. It's actually really early in the flight, relatively speaking. The first stage booster then turns around and lands here. The second stage continues on the red path here, and then second stage cutoff is right here, and then they're in orbit. So the interesting thing, I mean, once they get to here, you're in a parking orbit. That's as far as they have to go to get to a parking orbit. But the reason they're measuring weather all the way up to Ireland practically is because if you have to abort at like this point here, you're going really fast and you're almost in orbit, but you're not quite there yet. So you're basically like super suborbital. But any of these paths here, you know, if you can abort here, because remember the abort system can operate all the way to orbit. So it can abort during the first stage and it can abort during the second stage. This is completely different than how like the Apollo program was, because you'd have that first separation and they drop the first stage, and then eventually a few seconds later they would jettison the launch escape tower, and then they would not have an abort opportunity, with at least not with the launch escape tower, and that would happen shortly after that separation. So let's see, we've got Falafel, thanks for the stream. Very informative. Keeps me awake while programming the DM-2 flight computers in Kerbal Space Program. Yes, I love it. Get after that Kerbal Space Program. Did you hear about the Virgin Orbit launch failure? I did hear about the Virgin Orbit launch failure. That's super unfortunate. So in case you didn't hear about it, Virgin Orbit, right? They launched their Launcher 1 airplane rocket combo. Basically a giant airplane with a rocket that's mounted underneath the wing, and it's a launch to orbit. That's the intended purpose. So it's a little bit different than the whole Spaceship 1, Spaceship 2 thing from Virgin Galactic that's suborbital. This is an orbital class rocket that's supposed to launch from an aircraft. So it's carried up to altitude on an aircraft underneath the wing, then they drop it, ignite the engines, and it goes into orbit. Today, from the sounds of it did not, they dropped it. The end. It didn't make it to orbit. They didn't really put out a lot of information about it, but that's super unfortunate. Never like to see that. SpaceX using an Astrovan. No, SpaceX will not use the Astrovan. SpaceX will now use... Let's pull up a couple of... SpaceX is going to be using Tesla Model X's. Model X's to bring the astronauts to Launch Complex 39A. So they this is the wrong one. let's see. Oh, there's OBS. That's not what we want. That's like a little inception there. NASA, ooh, this is the wrong one. NASA. Where'd my, oh, I lost my window. There it is. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Right there. I think this is the one. So here, this is a photo inside firing room 4 at Kennedy Space Center. This is where the launch control teams will actually manage the launch from. It's inside the big launch control center, which you would have seen if you watched a Space Shuttle launch or even the Apollo launches. You've got, oh, there it is, the Tesla Model X. So this is what the astronauts are taking to Launch Complex 39A here. So this is their Tesla Model X outfitted with NASA logos. License plate says ISS bound, which is kind of awesome. There's Doug and Bob in the back seat, ready to head to the pad. This was during the dress rehearsal that was on Saturday, so just 2 days ago. They went through an entire dress rehearsal, pretty much start to finish. They ended the dress rehearsal at fuel up. That's about 45 minutes prior to launch. So they did not do the fuel up procedures during dress rehearsal. They just did all the way up to that point. So they did get in the capsule, strapped in, closed the hatch, did all of that. They got to the T-minus 45 minutes, and that's where they ended the dress rehearsal part. The rest of it, they tested that during static fire, which was Friday, last time we were live. The seats need more color. Boney Chuck, you don't like the white suits? I kind of like it. I feel like it looks a little Star Wars-ish. Yeah, so this is... I wanted to see where the original comment is. Where was it? So I saw Sebi said it's a SpaceX launch, not a NASA launch. So yeah, just to confirm what Sebi said is this is, and they mentioned it on the press conference, this is a SpaceX operation. NASA is the customer, and NASA has to give a go for launch, so they can't launch without NASA being like, okay. But this is SpaceX's show for the most part. Like they are running launch control. It's SpaceX's teams, SpaceX's personnel that is managing pretty much just about the entire launch process. Now they do have mission managers for NASA that will be there, but that's a much smaller team compared to the SpaceX launch control teams that will be in place. But this is a SpaceX launch that is launching for NASA, which is a whole lot different than it used to be in the shuttle days, where it was a NASA launch. Like it was NASA's people, NASA's launch control teams. So this is being pushed off to the private sector. This is a SpaceX launch. What Flickr account is that? That was the NASA HQ Flickr account. Just Google NASA HQ Flickr. You can pull up those photos. Are they spacewalk suits also? Says Ron over on Facebook. No, these are not EVA suits. These are only pressure suits that are for flight inside of Crew Dragon. They will not be EVA suits. There's no plan for them to be EVA suits. They're not designed for EVAs. EVAs being extravehicular activities, spacewalks. So these are not EVA suits. They will only be used inside the Crew Dragon as a pressure suit. They don't have life-sustaining functionality like that you would need for going outside the International Space Station. They'll still use the regular NASA suits that we've seen for years. Once astronauts reach orbit, are they going to use the Tesla Roadster for taxiing around? If only it was still around. It's not anywhere near here these days. It's out there, just not near us. So yeah, they'll be taking the ride, and this is, let me give you an idea. We'll give you a little bit of a preview. Some of this stuff we're gonna show on launch day, but I'll give you a little bit of a preview here as well. Just to give you an idea of where this is. So this is at the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building, which is on Kennedy Space Center property, Cape Canaveral. So if you've ever been to Kennedy Space Center, you most likely will have gone to the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, which is right here. This is the Visitors Complex, which is where the tourist and museum and all that kind of cool stuff is. I mean, you can take bus tours there and they'll drive you around the rest of the campus, but Visitor Complex is here. This is where the Neil Armstrong Operations Building and Checkout is, right where that red pin is. Now, pad 39A is up here. So they're gonna make the trip from the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building. They will head from here, get out of the way here. They're gonna head to the west, then they'll head north up this road here. Then they will head east, and up here is the Vehicle Assembly Building. So that's the big Vehicle Assembly Building right here. They're gonna head, likely they'll head right down this road right here. So they'll come right down here, and this is the press site where all the press people will be hanging out here at the turning basin. And they will continue out, and then to get to the pad, it pretty much follows the crawler path. So this is the crawler path right here from the Vehicle Assembly Building, where the big Space Shuttle and the Space Shuttle crawler went down from here. It's also the SLS crawler will take that route as well. SLS will head up here to the north to pad 39B, and the astronauts will continue on straight over here to 39A, which is now SpaceX's pad. Imagine a Tesla with Draco thrusters instead of wheels. Yeah, right? That would be something. When is SpaceX starting their stream? Are they going to stream the whole suit up and ride to the Falcon? So that's a bit of the unknown that I'm not 100% sure on what SpaceX's plan is. I know NASA's starting their stream at 12:15, and I believe this is 12:15 p.m. Eastern time, and I believe that they're doing that jointly with SpaceX. So I think both SpaceX and NASA are going to go live at like 12:15 p.m. Eastern time. Not 100% sure about that, but I'm expecting to see, because the stream starts at 12:15, at least on NASA's end, because it starts then, that's a little more than 4 hours prior to launch, and that is well before the astronauts suit up. So basically, to give you an idea on a timeline, at 4:15, which is basically when they go live, is the final weather briefing, or the final weather briefing that the astronauts will get. Then at 4 hours and 5 minutes, NASA hands off the astronauts to SpaceX. That's more of it's kind of just a formality. They're like, here, you're in charge of them now. That happens at 4 hours and 5 minutes. Then at 4 hours, they start the suit up process. Around 3 hours, I think it's actually like 3 hours and 15 minutes, they leave the operations building and head over to the launch pad. Then they head up the tower. They get into the Dragon capsule. I believe it's 2 hours and 15 minutes prior to launch. I don't have my timeline right in front of me here for this today, but and then they'll close the hatch and everybody leaves. But they don't start fueling the rocket until the final fueling pole is right around T-minus 45 minutes, a little bit less than that probably, and then they start loading fuel at T-minus 37 minutes. So the astronauts will be in the vehicle for a while before they do any sort of like fueling operations, which is really where the more riskier part starts. But they arm the escape system at T-minus 45 minutes, and that's kind of the That'll be the biggest factor right there, is once they arm that escape system, then they mean business. That's when the goosebumps will start, is T-minus 45 minutes, because that's when you're like, oh, wow, this is happening now. Like, they really think they're going to launch. So that's what, keep an eye out for that. T-minus, I can get goosebumps right now talking about it. It might just be because I'm cold, but yeah, keep an eye out for T-minus 45 minutes, because that's going to be the point where you're like, oh, it's on. It's happening. Like, here we go. Giddy up. How many Gs will the astronauts be experiencing on ascent? So I'm glad you asked that, Ronald, because I mentioned it in the last stream and I was a little bit off, but they will pull up to 4 Gs, is what I heard. I thought it was up to 3 Gs, but it's actually up to 4 Gs, is what Bob and Doug said in their one of their press conferences. So up to 4 Gs is what they will experience in the Crew Dragon capsule. Yeah, and it may be, I don't know if it's 4 Gs exactly. So a lot of people are saying 3.5 Gs. So yeah, I just heard up to 4 Gs. So 3.5 Gs would be pretty good. So right in the ballpark. Maybe in case you don't know, we're talking about Gs. We're talking about gravity, how much gravity they're feeling. So 1 G would be what you're feeling right now. I'm feeling 1 G just sitting here. Once you start accelerating in a certain direction, that's when you start to feel extra Gs. So your body starts to feel heavier than it actually is. So 2 Gs, if your head is under 2 Gs of load, your head feels like it weighs twice as much than it actually weighs. So if your head normally weighs 10 pounds, under 2 Gs, it would weigh 20 pounds or feel like it's weighing 20 pounds. Under 4 Gs, it would feel like 40 pounds. How long will the 2 astronauts be in space for, and what will they do during that time? So it's not 100% certain right now how long they will be in space for. So it's a range because NASA hasn't decided how long their mission's going to be for. So it's kind of like booking a one-way ticket with the intention of returning, but they don't know when their ticket home is going to be on the way up. So it will be anywhere from, I believe it's 30 days to 110 days. Is how long they could be at the International Space Station for. And then they're going to be joining as part of the expedition crew. So once they get to the International Space Station, they will be doing what I would consider normal operations. I mean, they're going to do some stuff with the Crew Dragon for checkouts and testing to make sure that it interfaces with the space station, their electrical systems, environmental control systems, all that kind of stuff. They'll be testing some of that, but they'll also be doing what I would consider regular space station work. So the astronauts that have gone up on the Soyuz and stayed there for months at a time, they'll be doing a lot of the same work that those astronauts would be doing. This is how they're getting up to the International Space Station. So then once they get on orbit, NASA will decide how long their mission's going to be based on the readiness of the next SpaceX mission, which is Crew 1, or USC. I think it's USCV-1 is the official name of it, but Crew 1 for short. So when Crew 1, once they get a better idea on how ready Crew 1 will be and how far down the road that is, they will make a decision on Demo 2, because they're really trying to minimize the amount of time that they have to retrieve astronauts from the International Space Station. They want an astronaut presence on the International Space Station, especially for the U.S., pretty much at all times, and they don't want it to just be like one person from the U.S. They want a U.S. crew there. So once they get a better idea on how Crew 1 is progressing, then they'll decide how long Bob and Doug are going to stay on the International Space Station. They might stay a short time, they might stay a long time, then they'll come home, splash down. It's interesting though, they said during the press conference that Elon was concerned, and I didn't see this anywhere, but I'm glad they brought it up. They said that Elon his biggest concern is during re-entry, that's got to be a nerve-wracking process or time right there. But during re-entry, he's worried about the capsule spinning, is what they said during the press conference. So that'll be something we're going to have to remember and keep an eye on during the re-entry period, which is still weeks away, but something to keep an eye on. Do you think Starship is going to launch humans in 2024 to Mars? I think that would be awesome. I don't know if it'll be ready by 2024 to go to Mars. Maybe to the moon by 2024. I don't know if we'd be ready to go to Mars that quickly, but it'd be great if we were. I would love it. I mean, they are making very fast progress, but it's really hard to set your sights on, for me, to set my sights on Mars when it's still on the ground and hasn't really done any sort of test flights yet. I mean, you look at some of these other test programs that are currently happening, and they'll go years before they're even considered like operational. So it's really hard to be like, yeah, we're going to Mars in 2024. It's like, all right, let's get step 1 first. Let's see if we can get to that 150 meter hop. And then we'll talk about step 2, and then Mars is like step 50. As I was taught in the military, keep it simple. Yep. Yeah, generally, well, and I think that's a lot of the reason why the Crew Dragon didn't go with propulsive landings. Although, in retrospect, at least for me, maybe not for them, but which one would have been harder? Propulsive landing or this whole parachute issue? Because that seems... the parachute landing system gave them so much trouble. And like Hans said during the press conference, I mean, a parachute system, you can't actually test the system that will fly. You can test similar conditions, but once you pack the parachute and load it into the Crew Dragon capsule, you can't test it again. Because, I mean, once you test it, then you have to repack the parachute and put it back in. And there's always a chance that something could go wrong while repacking the parachute. So, yeah, the whole parachute thing is kind of complicated. And the Crew Dragon capsule is capable of propulsive landing. Elon said that they didn't exactly remove propulsive landing from the Crew Dragon capabilities. They just removed it from their NASA missions, and they will not do any sort of propulsive landing on NASA missions because they didn't want to get certification for that. It was going to be too hard to certify the Crew Dragon for propulsive landings, but it is capable of propulsive landings. It could land without any parachutes. And who knows? The one question that nobody's really asked at any sort of these press conferences that I would like to see is there still software in Crew Dragon that could potentially activate propulsive landings? Like, let's say they do have a parachute problem and none of the parachutes come out. I mean, the chances of that are so unlikely, so I'm guessing no. But let's say no parachutes come out and they're just heading to the ocean, and the option is smash into the ocean or hit the propulsive landing button. Is that a thing? I mean, I'm guessing no, just because the chances of all 4 parachutes failing are very slim, but I would like to know that. Whether the software has been completely removed and just kind of shelved, or it's still in there and there's a button in the interface, but we're just not going to touch it. I want to know that. Does anybody know the answer to that? I have not heard them say one way or another. I'm ready for the 27th. I know we're getting close now. There you go. Daniel says, Elon said the Super Dracos would work if the parachutes failed. And that's what I would think. I would think that they'd have some sort of mechanism to be like, yeah, well, we have this capability and it's either smash into the ocean or use it. I don't know. Kind of crazy. What else did we hear in the press conference? I don't know if I have anything else here that we didn't cover. So this I guess we could talk about... We didn't cover this on Friday, so this is the launch hazards. We're going to touch on this on Wednesday as well. Launch hazards basically being, here's the flight path and the keep out areas for aircraft. This is where the drone ship will be, is out in this orange area. That's where the first stage booster landing will be. The green area here is just a keep out area for boats and things like that. This orange area, I believe, is the aircraft keep out area. And that will, but basically your pad abort could land anywhere here in this green area here. I don't know what is this purple thing? Oh, that's the planned primary recovery site, which is very interesting. Like, look how close it is to the coast. So that's the prime landing location for Crew Dragon for recovery when they come back. That's the prime expected location right there, is the purple dot. Over here, backup dot, this is the backup landing location. This is the one that we talked about that I believe it's Go Searcher is heading out here towards, it's right off the coast from Pensacola here. So that's the other purple dot you have there, is that other recovery location. And then we also have stage 2 re-entry. This is stage 2 re-entry off the west coast of Australia. Way out here, that's where the stage 2 will re-enter, burn up, and then eventually crash into the ocean. We'll be out there. So when are you going to live stream on the 27th? Well, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the original plan was to start streaming at noon on the 27th. That's Eastern time, which would be 1600 UTC. But I think, from the sounds of it, I believe I'm going to go a little bit earlier than that. Because if NASA and SpaceX are going live at 12:15, there's going to be a lot to listen in and talk about and go through their stuff. But I want to go through our own thing that we have going on. So it may be an hour or two earlier than that. So it may be 11 or 10 a.m. Eastern time on the 27th, which would be 1400 or 1500 UTC, somewhere in that range. I haven't nailed it down yet, but keep an eye out on the YouTube event. It's already on our YouTube page. So if you haven't paid attention to it, you go to youtube.com/OLHCN, and there's an event there, and it'll send you a reminder. If you hit the little add reminder, then you can be reminded as we get close. And if I update the time there, I'll make sure we publish the exact time on Twitter and on Facebook and on our Discord channel and all that kind of stuff. I will publish it ahead of time, but it will be no later than noon Eastern time on the 27th, potentially a little bit earlier than that, hour or two earlier. Will our astronauts be flying Russian spacecraft anymore? I believe we do still have a Russian flight purchased. And I think they'll continue to use that contingency until we have both SpaceX and Boeing operational, or at least until we have one certified operational. So once we get past Demo 2 and NASA can give the final okay and the final human operational certification, then I think the picture for using Russian Soyuz flights becomes a little smaller once they have that human certification. Because right now, NASA's only given human certification just for this one flight. They're like, yeah, we'll let you fly humans just on this flight. But the others are not, well, and this is, we'll let you fly humans, we'll let you fly NASA humans. I mean, they're free to fly private citizens whenever they want, but they probably won't do that until at least after they start operational missions with NASA. Press conference at 10 tomorrow. Will you be on? I'm not planning to do the press conference tomorrow. If there's anything super interesting, I might do something tomorrow evening, but I don't have any plan. My next planned live stream is not until Wednesday, the 27th. So, but I will I'll probably be streaming on my personal Twitch channel after this is all over. So if you want to hang out and chat some more over on my personal Twitch channel, you can do that as well. And you can, the Overlook Horizon Twitch channel hosts my personal Twitch channel. So if you don't know how to find my personal Twitch channel, you can go to the Overlook Horizon Twitch channel, and it'll get you my personal one. Demo 2 event will launch here on, oh, that's Philippine Standard Time. Given out a couple times. What time do y'all have to go to the Space Shuttle or something? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Warface. Because the Space Shuttle's in museums now. So we're not launching the Space Shuttle anymore, but we got Crew Dragon. The astronauts will head out to Crew Dragon at T-minus 3 hours and 15 minutes on the 27th. So that should be around, what is that, like 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time. What happened to our music? We lost our music. I don't know what happened. Okay. But yeah, really close to the land. That's Ron talking about the recovery location there. Yeah, real close to shore. If you remember on Demo 2 or Demo 1 rather, they landed a lot further out to sea, basically to test the accuracy of their recovery methods. But this was the plan. This was the plan, was to bring that in closer to shore when it came time to do Demo 2. All right, well, I think I'm going to wrap up here for today, so you can start placing your wrap-up bets here. How many times I say I'm going to wrap up. But yeah, just to recap, we've got the go for launch, and NASA and SpaceX are going to continue on towards a planned launch of Wednesday, the 27th at 4:33 minutes and 33 seconds past the hour in the afternoon Eastern Time. 16:33 Eastern Time, which is 20:33 UTC on the 27th. They're pressing forward. It's happening. We're getting there. The big concern, weather. We don't know if the weather's going to hold up. To be honest, it's not looking good for weather. So we're gonna see. Chair squeaking. Scared me. We've got a final weather brief. They've got 2 weather briefings that will happen on the morning of launch. So there'll be one at 6. Sorry, now my feet are stuck because now I'm paranoid about it squeaking. We've got a weather briefing 6 hours prior to launch that they'll make a decision whether or not to proceed, whether they have any chance. Then they have a final astronaut weather briefing 4 hours and 15 minutes prior to launch, and then they'll make the final call 45 minutes before launch. So there's a couple opportunities for weather there to get some updates. So we could know really early in the day. They might just be like, yeah, there's no chance this is not happening, and they might scrub it early in the day. Or they might stick around for a while and have at least bring it all the way down to T-minus 45 minutes. I would like to think, as long as there's no lightning in the area, I would like to think that they would at least bring it down to T-minus 45 minutes, if for nothing else other than to have another dress rehearsal, basically. So there's minimal risk to the astronauts until that T-minus 45 minute mark. At T-minus 45 minute, that's when the launch escape system is armed. That's when the fueling starts. So they might as well go all the way to T-minus 45 minutes. But if you've got things like lightning happening or anything like dangerous in the area, then they might call it off early. But I would think that they would at least bring it to T-minus 45 minutes. That's just speculation on my part. I have absolutely nothing to back that up. So, MVM, what's the weather? Weather is 40% go right now. So we got a 40% chance. Yeah, Russian Rooster, you've got it backwards there. It's 40% chance go, 60% chance no-go. So we have a 40% chance that they will fly on Wednesday for weather. And also keep in mind that 40% chance does not account for upper level winds or any recovery weather conditions. That is only launch commit criteria. So your chance of launch is actually probably lower than 40% when you factor in upper level winds and recovery conditions. Your chance of launch is probably going to go down just on any day once you factor in recovery condition locations, because there's so many of them that they're just going to bring your average down no matter what. But 40% chance, not including upper level winds or recovery site conditions. So keep that in mind. So that's all we've got for now. Maybe I'll see some of you over on my personal Twitch channel later tonight. But other than that, we're going to wrap up here for tonight. And hopefully I'll see you guys all back here on Wednesday. I can't believe that's the next thing happening is Wednesday's flight, right? That's going to be pretty nuts. Got my mission patch. We're ready to go. Ready to hit it off on Wednesday. All right, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for hanging out for a little while here today. Hopefully see you back Wednesday. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all the things you do on the social media stuff. And I will see you back here Wednesday. My name's Tori. This is Overlook Horizon. We'll see you then. Goodbye, everybody.